Good morning, Drew! I was kind of underwhelmed with your iPad fixing lineup video. Yeah, you may be, Tim, but I had 4 iPads in a perfect quadrant. That's the way Steve would have wanted it. Perhaps you're right. If you honor Steve's legacy better than we do, perhaps you should be calling more of these shots with software development. Yeah, I'm actually thinking I could fix iOS next. There's no way you can fix iOS, Drew. Oh yeah? Why is that? Well, because you cannot fix what is not broken. Oh, well played, Mr. Tim. Okay, I like that. Confidence, yes. Alright, that's enough. So here's my wish list. If you have nostalgia, there's a lot of returning characters in these videos because I've been asking for all this stuff in a lot of my iOS wish lists in the past, and they still haven't added a lot of them. But I will give them credit. I was asking for a continuity camera like for years, and they did finally add that. So in the event that only one of the items on my wish list can be added per year, I think we're in for a pretty exciting iOS 17. The number one, though, I'm going to start with the top priority and work my way down, is a charge limiter. I want this on everything, not just iOS, but with battery health being such a big concern these days and Apple not getting rid of the battery health feature because they were almost like forced in court to add it, I think it would be great if for those of us who have plenty of battery life, like I rarely kill my 13 Pro Max in a single day, we want to preserve our battery health and take control over when it's charging and when it's not charging. So if you could just build in a scheduling feature to the iOS battery settings and say, hey, don't charge until this time, or don't charge past this percentage until this time. I know Apple likes to think that they can figure out my charging routine and they can figure out my habits, but optimized battery charging still messes up a lot. It'll still charge to 100% at 2 or 3 in the morning and just keep the phone there for 100% for hours and hours and hours. So I think battery health could be preserved and saved a lot if they would let just some of us keep it to 80, 90%. Battery wouldn't degrade as fast. I rarely end the day with under 20% anyway, so I would rather preserve the battery health. And I know some people find that counterintuitive. Well, if you're worried about the battery getting worse, why are you intentionally letting the battery get lower? And you're probably also thinking, Apple wants your battery to degrade because then you'll be forced to get a new iPhone. Well, hold on a second here. My theory is that battery health degradation lowers the resale value of iPhones, which, why should Apple care about resale values? Well, that will convince people that if they can get a good deal on selling their existing iPhone because the battery health is high, then they won't have to spend too much more money on getting the next year's iPhone. So I want that on everything, but especially on iOS, yes. Charge limiter, it's very simple code. It's not that complicated. It should be baked in there natively. Next is one I've been asking for a very long time, which is just the death of pop-ups. The funny thing is on the iPhone 14 Pro, they've kind of eliminated a lot of pop-ups already, like the Face ID animation or low battery warnings and that kind of thing. I just don't think any UI element should ever just jump straight in front of the display, turning everything else off, whether it's like we need you to enter your password in the settings or your battery is low, any of that stuff. Even the airdrop animations and stuff could just be notifications. It could be baked into a dynamic peninsula, if you will. I don't think you should have to buy a 14 Pro for these things to go away, and they still haven't completely eliminated pop-ups. I don't think there's any situation where that should be allowed. It should just be a notification. Maybe that notification has a bit more information in it, but doesn't need to take over the whole display. The third one is kind of interesting. It's about the ringer switch, which I know I'm in the minority on. Like, everybody loves the ringer switch. I ran some polls, figured out that I'm about 1 in 5 people that doesn't really care for the ringer switch to be there. Reason for me, which is just fascinating to find out how we all use our phones differently, but I don't like notification sounds, really, on anything. On my car, phone, computer, like, I just like taptic feedback. Something will tap me on the watch, or even if I'm not wearing my watch, I prefer the taptic feeling my phone gives in my pocket rather than a noise. I can't find any ringer or notification sound that I'm comfortable with. If I'm in any circumstance, whether I'm alone or in a crowd or at a party or a funeral, I don't want my phone making noise. I'm okay with just the taptic feedback. So I leave my phone on silent at all times, which for me is kind of like, why does this ringer switch need to be there? Especially when over the years it tends to collect a lot of gunk and dust. It's hard to reach when you have a case and that kind of thing. So I'm not suggesting Apple should get rid of the ringer switch. That would be hardware. But I am suggesting that for those 1 in 5 people like me that have it on silent at all times, it would be nice if that switch could be mappable to other things. Like a guy on Twitter, Tutu, was suggesting today, based on my poll going around, that, well, if you are the type of person to leave your phone on silent 100% of the time, it would be cool if you could map that to be like the auto orientation lock. So rather than having to go into Control Center and turn on auto rotate or turn off auto rotate, just having the switch right there might save a couple of seconds instead of having to go into Control Center every time. I would appreciate that, and I know not everybody would use it, but I'm just telling you, with the current way my ecosystem works, everything is on silent, okay? I'm all in on the taptics, and I think that would be a fun kind of experiment for you guys. Everyone kept saying in the replies, like, I need a quick way to mute my phone without having to look at the display. Here's an easier one for you. Just leave your phone muted at all times. Then you don't even have to think, oh, did I mute my phone or not? I'm sure that you guys have your reasons for wanting the phone to make noises at certain times, but seriously, just try it. Try to, like, leave your phone in silent at all times. How many problems does that actually cause to just rely on taptic feedback? Maybe it's just because I'm a diehard Apple Watch user, I don't know, but I want that ringer switch to become just a general function switch, kind of like the action button is on the Apple Watch Ultra. You can set that to whatever you need it to be. I would like that switch to set to even something else, like activating the reduce white point or something. But speaking of, while I'm on that subject, there are still times when I'm using my phone and it's very, very dark, and I don't want to wake up my wife or disturb anybody else in the dark room, and my eyes are just not ready for that much brightness, so I would be happy if they included the reduce white point option in the brightness settings. So when you go in Control Center, if you could just tap one button in there to make the display extra dim, or you have to like long press on the brightness rather than do what I do now, which is triple tap on the back of my iPhone whenever I want it to get very dim. But sometimes it doesn't quite register the triple tap, and I feel like it shouldn't be that hard to lower your brightness even further when necessary. It would be kind of cool if you pulled down extra hard when lowering the brightness on your phone, it would kind of let the brightness go even dimmer than it typically lets you, so that would be appreciated. And here's another one you've heard me say for years, interactive widgets. I think the whole reason people wanted widgets on the home screen in the first place was because they wanted more information and to not necessarily have to open the app to control something. The biggest example I can think of is just a Now Playing widget. Apple was comfortable having a Now Playing widget on Android for Apple Music. Like, Apple software employees had to come up with that feature, but they're not comfortable with having a Now Playing widget on the iPhone, which would just mean you don't even have to activate Control Center to pause or skip or rewind music. You could just have it right there whenever music is playing, rather than just suggesting some random album. A lot of the widgets, in my opinion, aren't that useful, so letting them be interactive, I think software developers and even Apple first-party apps could take full advantage of having controls and being able to access things without fully opening the app. And while we're on the subject of apps, I asked for this last year, I think, as well, but I still want an AirPods app, particularly because I'm a really big fan of the charge limiter idea, because optimized battery charging, especially with AirPods, is just not that reliable. I've had times where I really need to use my headphones right now, but they only charge to 80% because AirPods were like, oh, he probably doesn't need them. And other times where like the right AirPod would charge to full and the left one would charge to 80. So it would be so much more simple if we just had a dedicated AirPods app. We could see what firmware version we're on. We could manage different AirPods connections. You know, you could ping them without having to access Find My. You could check battery health perhaps through that app. I just feel like AirPods are used for so many things and they don't have a display, but Apple's comfortable with having an Apple Watch app, right? So why not an AirPods app? Maybe they could combine the two and just have a wearables app for managing all of your iPhone accessories that Apple manufactured or something. But for how much we use them and how many settings there are, you know, customizing the double tap and triple tap features and Siri controls and that kind of thing, it just makes sense to have a dedicated app. I feel like other companies have already done this as well, so I'm in favor of it for iOS 17. And my last few requests are things that people have been asking for years for, so I'm just kind of rapid fire with the topic in general of customization. So we got a lot of lock screen customization last year, which was cool, but I feel like they didn't quite go all the way with it. Like the little flash and camera toggles at the bottom of the lock screen still don't let you remap those to anything else, which I think is stupid. You can swipe the lock screen to the left and activate the camera, but they still want to have a dedicated button that you have to long press to activate. I would rather change that to something else, whether it's messages, whether it's Apple Pay or the calculator app. I don't know, just let third parties put whatever they want in those little toggles. Same thing with the home screen. I know that there's people in the tech community that have always been asking for big redesigns. I'm bored with the Safari app icon. I want them to change it to something else. iMessage should be blue. new. I know you guys get bored with the same old app icons, but that's why I'm suggesting letting the user decide, like theme packs. Yes, I know this is on Android, but I feel like Apple would actually make a version of this that people would use. There's already people that are using Siri shortcuts to make their own skins for iOS where the apps are all of similar colors or similar themes. Some people like these monochrome layouts, and some people try to really re-engineer the iPhone so that it looks like the iOS 6 days with the old app icons and the old wallpapers and stuff. I feel like Apple should be supporting this first party. If people want to customize and control the way the iPhone looks, just let them, so that we can stop hearing about how iOS isn't as customizable all the time. I'm even the type of guy that would be okay with your apps on the home screen being placed anywhere. I know that Apple's stayed very consistent with, no, the apps have to go from left to right, but people can already get these like Siri shortcuts that make like fake blank apps, and people are already putting their apps at the bottom of the screen and having all of this negative space above those apps. It's like, Apple, if people are gonna go through all of this trouble anyway, doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of you trying to lock everyone into the left to right app layout method? So yeah, just let people put apps wherever they want. I don't think that's going to destroy the simplicity and elegance of iOS. It's like, if someone wants to have a really customizable, really themed out home screen or lock screen or whatever, and you're worried that that's gonna be too confusing for some, it's like, okay, well then just let the default be the default, but have back-in ways for someone to really customize the iPhone the way they want. And if you don't support that, then they're just gonna go through these backdoor ways of making their own skins and putting blank apps for negative space anyway. So just save people some time at this point, Apple. And my last big request, of course, is it would be great if you could sideload apps and install software that's not from the iOS. I'm sorry, I couldn't get through that one, but that's not gonna happen, so not on my wish list. But overall, I am pretty happy with the current state of iOS, but of course there's always room for improvement. These are pretty little changes, but ones I would appreciate. Let me know your guys' biggest request for iOS 17 down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly over on Tailosive Tech Pro. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. This is your Alp Sheep here, and I'll see you all in the next one.